Alexander Reed's life had frozen solid on the rainy October night 7 years earlier when his 8 months pregnant wife, Emily, disappeared without a trace while walking to the 24-hour pharmacy 3 blocks from their brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. The police searched for weeks, dragged the river, questioned every neighbor, found her abandoned phone on the edge of Prospect Park with the battery dead and the last photo a blurry shot of autumn leaves. Ruled it either a tragic accident or possible abduction, but no body, no ransom call, no witnesses. Just an open missing person file that grew colder every year, until even the detectives stopped returning his calls. Alex poured every dime into private investigators, sold the startup he'd co-founded, lived off savings that dwindled faster than hope, raised their daughter Sophia alone in the same 4-story townhouse that now felt like a museum of grief. Every room still holding Emily's perfume in the curtains, her laugh in the creaky stairs, her unfinished sketches on the kitchen counter. By day, he was the quiet single dad who dropped Sophia at St. Anne's every morning, worked freelance coding contracts from home, picked her up at 3, made dinosaur-shaped pancakes, read her 3 bedtime stories, even when his eyes burned from sleeplessness. But after Sophia finally drifted off, he would sit on the 3rd-floor landing with a bottle of whatever was cheapest and stare at the front door as if Emily might still walk through it, dripping wet and laughing about forgetting her umbrella. The dark circles under his eyes had become permanent, his once athletic frame now thin and sharp-shouldered. Friends stopped inviting him anywhere because he always said no, and the only new person he spoke to in months was the real estate agent who convinced him to rent out the garden-level apartment to help pay the mortgage that was eating him alive. He listed it on every app, set the rent low because he didn't want to deal with negotiations, and within 48 hours, a young woman named Lily Carter replied with a simple message. Need a place immediately, quiet tenant, cash up front, excellent references. She showed up on a freezing November evening with 1 duffel bag, a backpack, cheeks red from the wind, dark auburn hair twisted into a messy knot, green eyes that looked too old for her face, paid 3 months in crisp hundreds without blinking, and asked only that he never enter the apartment without knocking first. Alex didn't care. He needed the money, and she seemed harmless, almost fragile, the kind of person who apologized for breathing too loud. Sophia was instantly fascinated by the pretty lady downstairs and kept trying to sneak cookies under her door, but Lily rarely came out except to take the trash to the curb at odd hours, always wearing the same oversized black hoodie, pulled up even indoors. And every single night, starting from the very first, Alex heard it. Soft, muffled crying that seeped through the old floorboards directly into his bedroom above. Sometimes just quiet sobs, sometimes heartbreaking wails that made his chest ache because they sounded exactly like Emily the night she thought she'd lost her first ultrasound photo. He told himself it was none of his business. People rent garden apartments to have privacy. Maybe she'd just gone through a breakup. Maybe family died. Maybe she was mentally ill. Whatever it was, he had his own ghosts to wrestle. But night after night, the crying grew louder, more desperate, until one Thursday at 2 in the morning, he couldn't take it anymore. Pulled on sweatpants, walked downstairs in bare feet, and knocked gently on her door. The crying stopped instantly. Dead silence for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then the chain rattled, the deadbolt clicked, and Lily opened the door just wide enough to peer out, eyes swollen, cheeks streaked with tears, lips trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered before he could speak. "I know the walls are thin. I try to be quiet. I'll find somewhere else tomorrow." Something about the way she said it, the raw defeat in her voice, cracked the armor he'd worn for 7 years. "Hey, no," Alex heard himself say, voice rough from disuse. Are you okay? Do you need help? Hospital? Police?" She shook her head so hard the hood slipped back, and for the first time he saw her fully in the hallway light. High cheekbones, a faint scar slicing through her left eyebrow, the exact slope of nose he used to kiss every morning, and around her neck, on a thin silver chain, hung a small oval locket he himself had bought Emily on their 5th anniversary in a tiny antique shop, the one engraved with tiny stars and the letter E he'd added later. His heart slammed so violently against his ribs he staggered back a step, the world tilting sideways. Where did you get that necklace?" he managed to choke out. Lily's hand flew instinctively to the locket, clutching it like a lifeline, confusion flickering across her tear-stained face. I've always had it, I think. It's the only thing I remember having when I woke up. Woke up where? His voice didn't sound like his own anymore. She hesitated, glanced down the hallway as if someone might be listening, then stepped back and opened the door wider. You should come in, I guess. I don't know why, but you feel safe. Alex crossed the threshold on legs that didn't feel attached to his body, every alarm bell screaming that this was impossible, while hope, dangerous, treacherous hope, clawed its way up his throat. The apartment was bare, mattress on the floor, one folding chair, a hot plate, no photos, no decorations, just a stack of self-help books about memory loss and trauma on the windowsill. Lily closed the door, leaned against it, arms wrapped around herself. 6 months ago, I woke up in a hospital in Albany. No ID, no memory, head injury, broken ribs, signs of long-term malnutrition. They said I'd been there unconscious for 3 days. Someone dropped me at the ER door and vanished. The doctors called me Jane Doe for weeks, until I picked the name Lily because Daly reminded me of something peaceful I couldn't quite grab. They ran my prints, dental records, nothing. No missing person match anywhere in the country. I had nightmares every night about being locked in a dark room, hands tied, someone injecting me with things that made me sleep for days, but no faces, no names, just terror. When I got discharged, they gave me 3 months in a shelter. Then I worked cleaning offices for cash, saved every penny until I could afford to rent something real, somewhere I could lock the door and feel safe for 5 minutes. I couldn't breathe properly. The locket glinted between her fingers each time she moved. Can I see it closer? He asked, terrified she'd say no. She unclasped the chain with shaking hands and held it out. He took it like it was made of glass, turned it over, there on the back in his own handwriting, scratched with a sewing needle the night Emily lost it on a hike and he found it again. A&E forever, 11/11/11, the date they met. His knees buckled. He sank onto the folding chair, tears burning tracks down his cheeks for the first time since the funeral that never happened. "This is my wife's," he rasped. "My wife, Emily Reed, she vanished 7 years ago, pregnant with our daughter. This locket never left her neck. I looked for it everywhere. How do you have this?" Lily's face drained of what little color it had left. She backed up until she hit the wall, slid down to the floor, knees to chest, rocking slightly. I don't know. I swear I don't know. Sometimes I get flashes, a man's voice calling me M, a little girl laughing, the smell of maple syrup and coffee, but then it's gone and my head feels like it's splitting open. Alex stared at her, really stared at her, stripping away the dyed-looking ends of her hair, the weight loss, the exhaustion, and beneath it all was Emily, older, broken, but Emily. The shape of her mouth when she worried her lower lip, the way she tilted her head when thinking, even the tiny freckle on her collarbone visible where the hoodie slipped. He wanted to grab her, hold her, scream her name until she remembered, but terror that he was losing his mind held him frozen. "Emily?" he tried softly. Her whole body jerked as if electrocuted, fresh tears spilling. That sounds right and wrong at the same time. Please don't say it again, it hurts." He forced himself to breathe, to think like the rational programmer he used to be. Okay. I'm sorry. Listen, we don't have to figure this out tonight, but you're not staying down here alone anymore. Come upstairs, sleep in the guest room. Sophia's at a sleepover tomorrow. We'll get you to a doctor, a neurologist, someone who specializes in amnesia. She shook her head violently. "No hospitals, please. They'll lock me up again. They'll say I'm crazy." "Not a hospital. A private
Doctor, I'll pay, whatever it takes." She searched his face for a long moment, something flickering behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or just exhaustion winning. "You look familiar, too," she admitted, voice crapping. "Like a dream I can't hold on to." That was all it took. Alex helped her gather the few things she owned, led her upstairs past the second floor where Sophia slept, into the third-floor guest room that still had Emily's old art supplies in the closet. He gave her one of his old t-shirts to sleep in, showed her the bathroom, then stood outside the door, listening to her cry herself to sleep, softer this time, as if some of the weight had lifted. He didn't sleep at all, sat on the landing with the locket in his fist until dawn, turning it over and over, texting his old detective contact at 5 a.m. "Need you to run DNA on someone ASAP. No questions yet." The reply came 10 minutes later. "Alex, it's been years. You're sure you want to open this again?" He typed back, "More sure than I've ever been about anything." That morning, he made breakfast like a zombie. Sophia bounded down the stairs full of questions about why Ms. Lily was wearing Daddy's shirt and eating Lucky Charms at their table, but Alex just ruffled her hair and said Lily was a friend who needed help for a while. Lily smiled shyly at Sophia, and something electric passed between them, Sophia climbing into her lap without hesitation, showing her every stuffed animal she owned, while Lily touched Sophia's curls with trembling reverence. Later, when Sophia was at school, Alex sat Lily down with the strongest coffee he could brew. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said gently. "I know this is terrifying, but I think you're my wife." She stared into her mug for so long he thought she'd shut down again, then whispered, "If I am, why can't I remember the person I'm supposed to love most in the world?" The pain in her voice nearly undid him. He reached across the table, slowly so she could pull away, covered her hand with his. She didn't pull away. "Because someone did something horrible to you," he said, voice steel under the softness. "And we're going to find out who, and we're going to get your memories back, all of them, I promise." She turned her hand palm up under his, fingers curling slightly, the smallest surrender. "I'm scared," she breathed. "Me too," he admitted. "But we're scared together now." And for the first time in 7 years, Alexander Reed felt something dangerously close to hope, sharp, bright, and terrifying, burning through the ice that had kept him alive. Little did he know, the nightmare was only just beginning, because the people who had stolen Emily once were about to realize their most valuable prisoner had escaped, and they would do anything, anything, to get her back before she remembered why they could never let her go. The first memory came back the way lightning tears open a black sky, sudden, violent, deafening. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Lily had moved into the guest room on the 3rd floor, 3 weeks of cautious coexistence, where Alex watched her like she was made of spun glass, and Sophia treated her like a new favorite toy who sometimes cried in her sleep. They had settled into an unspoken rhythm. Alex cooked breakfast before dropping Sophia at school, left a second plate warming in the oven for Lily, who never came down before 10, worked in his home office with the door cracked so he could hear if she had another nightmare, picked Sophia up, did homework at the kitchen island while Lily sat silently on the opposite stool, sketching in the cheap notebook he'd bought her because her fingers kept twitching for pencils the way Emily's always had. The sketches started as random swirls and slowly became the exact view from their back window, the maple tree, the cracked bird bath, the neighbor's orange cat, drawn with muscle memory her mind refused to acknowledge. That afternoon, the rain hammered Brooklyn like fists on a coffin lid, and Alex was upstairs helping Sophia build a blanket fort when the scream ripped through the house, raw, animal, nothing like the soft weeping he'd grown used to. He vaulted down 2 flights of stairs, heart exploding in his throat, slammed the guest room door open so hard it bounced off the wall, and found Lily on her knees in the middle of the floor, palms pressed to her temples, blood trickling from her nose, eyes rolled back to whites, screaming one word over and over, "No, no, no, don't touch her!" Alex dropped beside her, tried to pull her hands away, afraid she'd claw her own face. The second his fingers closed around her wrists, the screaming stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch. Her body got rigid, then crumpled forward into his chest, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Sophia stood frozen in the doorway, clutching her stuffed giraffe, eyes huge. "Daddy, is Miss Lily dying?"
Alex scooped Lily against him, felt her burning up, carried her to the bed, and barked at Sophia to get the frozen peas from the freezer if he wasn't down in 5 minutes. Lily's eyes fluttered open, pupils blown wide, unfocused, then locked on his face and filled with pure terror. "They took the baby," she rasped, voice shredded. "They cut her out of me, Alex. They cut her out while I was awake." The world disappeared. All sound, all color, gone. Only her words echoing inside his skull like gunshots. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stare at the woman who might be his dead wife, telling him their daughter had been stolen from her body 7 years ago, while he sat home waiting for a phone call that never came. Then the second bomb detonated. "You're bleeding," she whispered, reaching up to touch his cheek with trembling fingers. "You're bleeding, and I can't stop it. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I tried to run, but they shot you." Alex jerked back as if she'd burned him. There was no blood on his face. There had never been blood on his face. Emily walked to the pharmacy. There was no shooting, no violence, no witnesses. The official theory was she slipped near the park lake, hit her head, drowned. But Lily was seeing something entirely different, something that actually happened, and the realization hit him like a freight train. Everything the police told him was a lie. Someone staged the whole thing. Someone took her and rewrote history. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. The private DNA lab he'd paid a fortune to rush. He'd swabbed Lily's cheek while she slept 4 nights ago, compared it to Sophia's baby hair he'd saved in a locket all these years. He opened the email with shaking hands. 99.9997% probability Lily Carter is the biological mother of Sophia Reed. The room spun. Lily was watching him, tears cutting clean tracks through the blood on her upper lip. "It hurts so much when it comes back," she whispered, "like they're still cutting." That night he moved her into the master bedroom because she begged not to be alone, and he couldn't let her out of his sight anyway. Sophia, bless her fierce 7-year-old heart, simply announced that Miss Lily is mommy now, right? And no one had the strength to correct her. Alex lay awake beside the woman who was and wasn't his wife, listening to her breathe, counting the new scars he'd discovered under her t-shirt, a long surgical line low on her abdomen, perfectly straight, C-section. But Sophia had been born by emergency cesarean in a hospital with Alex holding Emily's hand. This scar was different, rougher, done without care. Needle tracks inside both elbows, faint but unmistakable. A circular burn on her shoulder blade the size of a cigarette. Every mark a chapter of a story someone had tried to erase. At 3:17 a.m., his phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You have something that doesn't belong to you. Return her in 72 hours, or the child dies next." He stared at the screen until the words burned into his retinas, then deleted the message, powered the phone off, and pulled Lily closer because whatever came next, he wasn't giving her back to the darkness that had kept her for 7 years.
The next 48 hours were a masterclass in controlled terror. Alex called in every favor he'd ever earned. First, Marcus Delgado, Mrs. Delgado's nephew, ex-force recon, now private security for people who couldn't go to the police. Marcus arrived within an hour, took one look at Lily curled on the couch with Sophia asleep against her, and simply nodded when Alex handed him the anonymous text. "We're going dark," Marcus said. "New phones, cameras on every entrance. I'll have 2 guys on the roof by nightfall." Second, Dr. Rachel Nazarian, the country's top specialist in dissociative amnesia and recovered memory syndrome, who owed Alex because he debugged her nonprofit's donor database pro bono for 2 years after her grant fell through. She cleared her schedule and drove in from Boston, spent 6 hours with Lily in the locked study, asking gentle questions, showing her old family photos one by one. Lily wept through most of it, but managed to identify their wedding china pattern, the exact shade of blue of Sophia's nursery walls, the tiny birthmark on Alex's left wrist, hip that only Emily could have known about. Rachel's verdict? Traumatic global amnesia caused by a combination of blunt force head injury, long-term benzodiazepine and scopolamine administration, drugs used in chemical restraint and mind-wipe protocols in illegal human trafficking rings, and deliberate psychological torture designed to fracture identity. Memories would return in waves, each one more violent than the last, and there was a very real risk of seizures or psychotic break if they pushed too hard. She's been conditioned to believe remembering will kill her, Rachel warned. Literally, there are probably post-hypnotic triggers buried in there. Third, Alex finally opened the box he'd kept locked in the attic since 2018, Emily's death file. Every private investigator report, every blurry CCTV still, every forum thread from the dark web missing persons boards he used to haunt at 4 a.m. He spread it across the dining table like a war map, while Marcus photographed everything for digital backup. One report jumped out immediately, the one he'd dismissed years ago because it sounded insane. A PI in Albany claimed to have found a witness who saw a pregnant woman matching Emily's description being carried out of a black van into a private clinic that burned down 2 weeks later. The witness recanted the next day, moved to Canada, never heard from again. Albany, same city where Lily woke up in the hospital 6 months ago. The connection hit like a sledgehammer. Whoever held Emily never let her go. The fire was cover. They kept her alive, drugged, imprisoned for years. But why? Alex stared at the C-section scar again while Lily slept and felt nausea rise. They took the baby. She said they cut the baby out while she was awake, but Sophia was here, safe, raised by him. Unless there had been 2 babies. Emily was 8 months pregnant with twins and never told him because it was supposed to be a surprise at the next ultrasound. He'd found the envelope with the twin sonogram in her purse after she vanished, but the police said it must be a mistake, only one heartbeat ever recorded. He'd believed them because grief makes you believe anything that lets you sleep. Now he dug out that envelope with shaking hands, held the grainy image to the light. 2 distinct sacs, 2 heartbeats. Sophia had a twin, and someone stole him. The realization was so monstrous, he had to sit on the floor before his legs gave out. Lily, Emily, stirred on the couch, murmured in her sleep, "Don't let them take Ben, please, Alex, don't let them." Ben, the name they'd chosen for a boy. She remembered the name, but not the man begging her to wake up. Hour 55 of the 72-hour deadline. The house was a fortress. Steel shutters Marcus installed over every window, motion sensors in the garden, 2 silent ex-Marines on rotating shifts. Sophia thought it was the coolest sleepover ever and had no idea her mother was slowly remembering being vivisected. Lily's episodes were coming faster now. She'd be buttering toast and suddenly drop the knife screaming about restraints. She'd braid Sophia's hair and freeze, whispering, "They cut mine off so I couldn't be recognized." Each memory brought more physical evidence. A tattoo on her inner wrist she'd tried to burn off with bleach. Tiny numbers, 0, 4, 1, 9. Coordinates, maybe, or a code. A dental molar that had been replaced with a cheap porcelain crown. Dental work done outside the U.S. Alex photographed everything, sent it to a hacker contact who worked for WikiLeaks back in the day. The reply came encrypted. Those coordinates are an abandoned airstrip in Sonora, Mexico, cartel territory, used for human cargo flights 2016 to 2021. Your wife was trafficked, brother. I'm sorry. Trafficked. The word tasted like rust and bile. His brilliant, funny, paint-under-her-nails wife reduced to cargo because she was young, beautiful, and 8 months pregnant with twins someone wanted. Designer babies? Organ harvesting? Some billionaire's sick adoption fantasy? The possibilities were endless and all vomitable. At 2:14 a.m. the power went out. Not a flicker, total blackout. Every light, every camera, the alarm panel dead. Marcus's voice crackled over the backup radio. EMP pulse from the street. Professionals. 6, maybe 8 tangos. They're coming in hot. Alex grabbed the shotgun he hadn't touched since Emily taught him how to shoot clay pigeons on their honeymoon, shoved Lily and Sophia into the panic room he'd installed last year and swore he'd never need, a reinforced closet under the stairs with oxygen and a satellite phone. Lily was lucid for the first time in days, eyes clear, gripping his shirt with desperate strength. "Don't leave us," she begged, and her voice was Emily's voice, the one that used to sing off-key in the shower. "I remember loving you," she whispered. "I remember everything before the van. I remember saying yes to forever. Alex, please come back." He kissed her like the world was ending, tasted 7 years of tears.
then locked the door from the outside because there was no inside handle. They'd be safe for 12 hours at least. Gunfire erupted downstairs, short, controlled bursts, Marcus and his team returning fire. Alex moved through the dark house like a ghost, shotgun ready, heart ice cold. He found the first intruder in the kitchen. Black tactical gear, night vision goggles, silenced MP5. Alex put 2 rounds of double-aught buck through his chest plate before the man could turn. The recoil barely registered. He wasn't the same man who'd cried himself to sleep for years. That man died the moment the text message said, "Or the child dies next." Second intruder on the stairs. Alex took his legs out, zip-tied him while he screamed, ripped a balaclava off. Early 20s, American, eyes wild with drugs or fear. "Who sent you?" Alex growled, pressing the shotgun muzzle into the kid's mouth. The answer was a choked sob, and then, incredibly, laughter. "You think this is the A-team? This is the warning. Dr. Harlan sends his regards. You have something he spent 7 years building." Dr. Harlan. The name pinged something in Alex's memory. An article years ago about a fertility specialist stripped of his license for unethical embryonic experimentation, vanished into private practice for the ultra-rich. Alex knocked the kid out with the butt of the shotgun and kept moving. The third floor was clear. Marcus's voice in his earpiece again. 3 down outside, 2 inside, we're pushing them back. But Reed, they've got a drone with thermal. They know exactly where the safe room is. Alex sprinted downstairs, met Marcus in the foyer, covered in blood that wasn't his. "We can't hold," Marcus panted. "Too many. Military grade. We need to exfil now." Alex looked at the reinforced closet door, heard Sophia's muffled crying inside, Lily singing softly to calm her, the same lullaby Emily sang when Sophia had colic. He made the only choice he could. "Then we take the fight to them." And for the first time in 7 years, Alexander Reed smiled the smile of a man with absolutely nothing left to lose. They blew the charges Marcus had planted in the foundation as a last resort, collapsed the garden entrance behind them, escaped through the old coal tunnel that hadn't been used since 1940. Alex carried Sophia piggyback. Lily ran beside him, holding his hand like she'd never let go again. Marcus brought up the rear, dragging the unconscious intruder they'd kept alive for answers. They emerged in the abandoned lot 2 blocks away, where a black Suburban idled, driven by Rachel Nazarian, who apparently had more skills than neurology. By dawn, they were in a safe house in Cold Spring, phones destroyed, new identities already printed. The prisoner woke up zip-tied to a chair in the basement, nose broken, missing 2 teeth. Marcus worked on him for 43 minutes. The kid broke fast. Dr. Elias Harlan, ex-Miracle Fertility Clinics, now running an off-the-books operation for clients who wanted perfect children, designer genomes, 0 genetic defects, specific eye color, IQ in the 180s. Harlan had a side business harvesting healthy late-term fetuses from abducted women, implanting the embryos he'd already engineered into surrogates who never asked questions because the pay was millions. Emily had been grabbed because she was carrying twins conceived naturally, but with exceptional genetic markers Harlan scouts identified from hacked prenatal records. They staged the disappearance, faked her death, kept her sedated for the cesarean, took the boy, told her the baby died, then couldn't kill her because she'd seen too much, so they kept her as a wet nurse and eventual egg donor for 5 more years, drugged out of her mind, until she escaped during a facility transfer 6 months ago. The boy, Benjamin, Ben, was alive, 7 years old, being raised in Luxembourg by a tech billionaire and his wife who believed he was an anonymous adoption. The kid in the chair sobbed that Harlan would burn the world to get Emily back because her DNA was the foundation stock for an entire bloodline of super kids worth billions. When he finished talking, Marcus put a bullet in his head and they burned the body in the woods. No one slept that night. Lily, Emily, sat on the safe house porch watching the Hudson River at sunrise, Sophia asleep inside with Rachel. Alex handed her a cup of coffee with 2 sugars, the way she always took it. She took it without looking, muscle memory again. "I remember our first date. You spilled wine on my dress and tried to blot it with soda water, made it worse. I laughed so hard I snorted." Alex's eyes filled. I remember our wedding dance. You stepped on my foot during the dip, and you froze and said, 'Are we having fun yet?'
On my toes 17 times. I remember the day we found out I was pregnant. You cried harder than I did. I remember the night you disappeared. I kissed you goodbye at the door and said, 'Don't forget the prenatals.'" She turned to him then, really looked at him, and for the first time the fog was completely gone. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "Even when I didn't know who you were, my body remembered. Every night I cried downstairs, I think I was crying for you." He kissed her like a drowning man finally reaching air, tasted coffee and tears and 7 lost years. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "We're getting our son back," she said, voice steady as steel. "Then we're burning Harlan's empire to the ground." Alex nodded, feeling the ice that had encased his heart for 7 years finally gloriously shatter. The war had just begun, and this time they were coming for blood. They buried the kid's ashes in the Hudson at dawn and never spoke his name again. Emily stood barefoot on the rocky bank in Alex's old Columbia hoodie, wind whipping her hair across her face, and watched the gray dust scatter over the water like she was finally closing a door that should never have been opened. Sophia slept in the Suburban 20 yards away, guarded by Rachel and Marcus, dreaming of pancakes and unicorns while her parents planned the end of a monster. Alex came up behind Emily, wrapped his arms around her waist the way he used to when she painted at 2 a.m., rested his chin on her shoulder. "We do this clean, or we do this loud," he said quietly. She turned in his arms, eyes no longer fractured, no longer afraid, green and fierce and alive. "We do it surgical," she answered. "Harlan took 7 years of my life, our son's entire childhood, and God knows how many other mothers and babies. I want him to feel every second of it coming back to him." Marcus drove them north to a decommissioned Air Force base in Plattsburgh, where a black hat collective that owed Alex favors from his dark web days in 2019 had set up a war room. 6 monitors, encrypted satellite uplink, a 3D printer already churning out fake passports. The collective called themselves the Orphans. Every one of them had lost someone to Harlan's network. They didn't want money, they wanted blood. The plan took 9 days to build, 9 days of Emily remembering more than any human should have to, 9 days of Alex watching the woman he loved turn into something sharper than steel. She remembered the facility in Sonora, the white corridors that smelled of bleach and terror, the other women with hollow eyes and shaved heads, the way Harlan would walk the rows every morning in his $5,000 suits, choosing who would be harvested that week. She remembered the armed guards who spoke Spanish and Russian, the private jet that flew in clients from Doha, Monaco, Beijing, men and women who paid $50 million for a child that would never get sick, never age badly, never be average. She remembered the nursery wing where the stolen babies were kept under blue lights, barcoded on the ankle like livestock. She remembered Ben, her son, his first cry when they finally let her hold him for 30 supervised seconds before ripping him away. Every memory came with vomiting, seizures, nosebleeds, but she refused the drugs Rachel offered. "Let it hurt," she said, wiping blood from her lip. "Pain keeps me honest." On the 10th day they had everything: Harlan's current location, a fortified estate outside Geneva, posing as a wellness retreat for the ultra-rich, the names of every guard on rotation, the security rotation schedule stolen by a maid who had been one of the harvested mothers, the location of Ben, a glass-walled mansion in Luxembourg owned by Victor Lang, founder of a crypto exchange, and his Instagram-perfect wife Elise, who posted photos of their miracle boy every Sunday. They had Harlan's offshore accounts, his private jet tail number, his pacemaker's remote access code, because even monsters get old. And they had a virus written by the orphans that would wipe every embryo record, every client file, every cent of blood money the second Harlan's network went dark. The only thing they didn't have was time. Harlan knew they were coming. He had moved Ben 3 times in the last week, doubled security, issued a new deadline, bring Subject Zero to Geneva by the winter solstice, where the boy dies on camera and the video goes to every dark web marketplace as a warning.
The winter solstice was 6 days away. They flew out on a stolen Gulfstream, piloted by Marcus's old squadron buddy, who asked no questions. Emily sat in the jump seat, staring at a photograph the orphans had pulled from Elise Land's private Instagram. Ben, at 7 years old, auburn curls like his mother's, green eyes like hers, smiling on a pony with the caption, "My little prince's birthday surprise." She touched the screen with one fingertip, as if she could reach through it. Alex watched her and felt something ancient and murderous uncoil in his chest. They landed in Bern under false papers, drove across the border in 2 unmarked vans, split into 3 teams. Team Alpha, Alex, Emily, Marcus, for Harlan. Team Beta, 4 orphans, for the Luxembourg extraction. And Team Gamma, Rachel and 2 others, for the data center in Zurich that housed the server farm. Everything was timed to the second, midnight on the solstice, when Harlan's clients gathered for the annual auction of the newest batch of designer embryos. Harlan's estate sat on a cliff over Lake Geneva, all glass and steel and arrogance. They breached the perimeter at 2357 using a drone swarm that took out the cameras with EMP darts. Marcus's silenced rounds dropped the exterior guards before they could raise alarms. Inside, the party was in full swing. Billionaires in tuxedos and gowns sipping $1,000 champagne, while on a massive screen behind the string quartet played a live feed of crying toddlers in glass cribs waiting to be bid on. Alex felt Emily go very still beside him. Then she moved, faster than he'd ever seen her, snatched a guard's sidearm and walked straight into the ballroom like she owned it. Conversation died. Someone screamed. Harlan stood on a dais in a midnight blue suit, 70 years old but Botox smooth, holding a tablet that controlled every lock in the building. He smiled when he saw her. "Subject 0, he said, voice amplified through the room. "Right on schedule. You always were my favorite." Emily didn't flinch. "Where's my son?" Harlan gestured, and the screen changed to a live feed of Ben asleep in her bedroom somewhere, an armed guard sitting beside the bed, red dot of a sniper rifle on the boy's forehead. "One word from me and his brains decorate the wall," he said pleasantly. "Put the gun down, come quietly, and maybe I let you say goodbye before we wipe you again." Emily lowered the pistol. Alex's heart stopped. Then she smiled, the most terrifying smile he'd ever seen. "You first," she said, and pressed a button on the watch Marcus had given her. Every screen in the room went black, then lit up with the virus activation countdown, 00010. Harlan's smugness faltered. The virus wasn't just deleting, it was uploading everything, every file, every video of crying mothers, every client name to Interpol, the FBI, The Hague, every major news outlet on Earth. At the same time, Team Beta breached the Luxembourg mansion in Luxembourg, flashbanged the guards, extracted Ben in under 4 minutes. The little boy didn't even wake up until they were in the van, and then he just looked at the orphan holding him and asked in perfect French if Santa was early. Harlan lunged for the emergency shutdown, but Emily was already moving, tackling him off the dais, fists and knees and 7 years of rage. Alex let her have 30 seconds of Harlan's blood on her knuckles, his perfect nose breaking, his screams. Then he pulled her off because they weren't monsters, not like him. Marcus zip-tied Harlan, gagged him with his own Hermes tie. Sirens were already wailing in the distance. Swiss police, Interpol, everyone converging because the virus had triggered every alarm on the planet. They dragged Harlan out through the terrace doors where a helicopter waited, piloted by the same buddy who'd flown them in. Emily paused at the threshold, looked back at the room full of billionaires, suddenly realizing their names were about to be on every most wanted list in the world, and said clearly, "Merry Christmas." They lifted off as the first SWAT team stormed the estate. Harlan sat trussed on the floor of the chopper, bleeding, glaring at Emily with pure hatred. She knelt in front of him, pulled the gag down. "You told me my son died. You let me hold his body, cold, blue, lifeless, for 5 minutes before you took him away. That was the cruelest thing you ever did, because it made me stop fighting." Harlan spit blood.
You were cattle, all of you, superior cattle, but cattle. Emily nodded, almost gently, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the locket, the same silver oval Alex had given her 12 years ago. She opened it, showed him the tiny photo inside, Alex and her on their wedding day, then snapped it shut and fastened it around Harlan's neck. "So you never forget who won," she said, and pushed him out of the helicopter into the black water 200 feet below. They never found the body. The headlines the next morning were apocalyptic. Billionaire baby auction ring exposed, hundreds arrested, children rescued. The world reeled for weeks. Mothers who had been told their babies died at birth suddenly got phone calls. Stolen children were returned to families who thought them dead. Harlan's clients fell like dominoes. Some fled to non-extradition countries. Most were caught at airports with private jets that never took off. The data center in Zurich burned to the ground, officially a gas leak. Team Gamma vanished into the wind with new names and enough money to disappear forever. Alex, Emily, Sophia, and Ben flew home commercial, coach seats, under their real names for the first time in months. Ben sat between his parents, holding both their hands, staring wide-eyed at the clouds, asking if airplanes always felt like magic. Sophia leaned across the aisle to poke her twin brother and announce, "I'm the big sister, so you have to share your toys." Ben considered this solemnly and replied, "Okay, but I get to pick the movie." Emily laughed until she cried, then cried until she laughed again, and Alex just held them all like he would never let go, because he wouldn't, not ever again. They landed at JFK on Christmas Eve under a sky full of snow. The brownstone had been rebuilt by the orphans while they were gone. New windows, new walls, but the same creaky stairs, the same maple tree in the back. Mrs. Delgado from next door had strung Christmas lights and left a casserole on the stoop with a note, "Welcome home, mija." Inside, the house smelled like pine and cinnamon, because Rachel had decorated every room. Sophia and Ben ran screaming through the halls, claiming bedrooms, fighting over who got the bunk beds. Emily stood in the kitchen, touching the counter where she used to roll out pie crusts, tears falling silently. Alex came up behind her again, arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder like that morning by the river. "We made it," he whispered. She turned, cupped his face, and kissed him slow and deep and full of every day they had lost. "We're just getting started," she said against his mouth. That night they put the kids to bed in the same room, because neither twin would sleep alone, read them 4 stories instead of 3, tucked them in with kisses and promises of tomorrow. Then Alex and Emily went to their bedroom, the one that still had the same headboard they'd carved their initials into on their wedding night. They didn't speak, just undressed each other slowly, rediscovering every scar, every new line, every inch of skin that had survived hell. When he entered her, it felt like coming home after a war that lasted a decade, like forgiveness and rebirth and love so fierce it could burn down empires. Afterward, they lay tangled, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I never stopped looking for you," he said into her hair. "I know," she answered. "I felt you every night I cried downstairs. I just didn't know why." Outside, snow fell soft and silent over Brooklyn, covering the city in forgiveness. Inside, Alexander and Emily Reed fell asleep wrapped around each other. 2 halves of a locket finally clicked shut. 7 years of darkness ended with the quiet sound of breathing, of children dreaming down the hall, of a family whole again. And somewhere far below Lake Geneva, a silver locket drifted in the dark water, stars engraved on the front, A&D forever on the back, waiting for the lake to keep its secrets. But up here, in the light, love had won. It was battered, scarred, late as hell, but it had won. And that was enough. That was everything.